can I afford a dog? This is a really important question, and I'm so glad that you're asking yourself that before you adopt a dog, or maybe you're doing research for a friend who's considering adopting a dog. This is something, it's really important, and it's one of the most responsible things that a potential pet owner can do is stop and think, can I afford a dog? Because dogs, I think, are a lot more expensive than people realize. It's not just planning for food and toys. This is a commitment that you're gonna have for the next decade, maybe longer. It's a long-term financial commitment. And so it's something that really, you wouldn't buy a vehicle or a house or something like that without really taking the time to consider what the costs are gonna be and if you can afford it. And the same care should be taken when you're going to be adopting a pet. Can I afford this? Because it is a long-term financial commitment. Doing some research before you adopt a dog is a must. First of all, what breed are you interested in? Research the breed to learn about their energy level, common allergies, health conditions, and any special needs that experienced pet owners may share. For example, we have a lab. One of the common health conditions for labs is hip dysplasia and arthritis, problems in their back end, specifically the hips. Over time. And so this is something that we knew going into it. It's something that we've been giving supplements for since Sadie was a puppy. And it's something that we have made some extra purchases because of. We have stairs, for example, going up to our bed so she doesn't have to jump. She can climb up and down. We have a ramp for the car so that she doesn't jump. She's climbing up and down. Those kinds of things are important to think about because those expenses are going to add up along the way. This information can also help you plan for possible veterinary costs, any special food needs that may come up, the variety and types of toys that you might need to provide. Some dogs need more mental and physical stimulation than others. You may be interested in a lazier breed who isn't going to need maybe as many toys or as much of a variety of toys, but maybe, say like a bulldog, any brachycephalic breed with the scrunchy nose, they are more prone to certain health conditions than other dogs. So maybe you're looking at a lazier bulldog and you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to need the energy and the exercise and the mental stimulation that, say, a Labrador would, but you may have some more heftier expenses on the veterinary end of it. So it's really important to think about the breed that you want, do some research, and get that information in advance. According to a poll done this year, it was published in the USA Today, the cost of owning a dog in 2024 is over $4,500 a year. This includes all of the initial costs of adopting a dog. Those first few months, the first year, the first couple years are typically more expensive. And then you sort of have this like average time where your dog's a young adult through adulthood. And then, on the other end of the spectrum, seniors can be a little bit more expensive too, because they typically need, different diets and have some more health needs and things like that. So this is the average cost of a dog. This isn't the cost of just any dog every year. It doesn't mean that your dog's going to cost you $4,500 a year, but it means that it could cost you more than that as well. So this is just an average. It includes all of those initial costs as well as the yearly expenses that come with dog care. Dogs are not just a one-time expense. Don't think that you're just going to buy a dog and then all you have to do is feed it for the rest of its life. That's not how it works. You're going to be paying for this, like I said, for more than a decade. This is a long-term financial commitment. It's important to remember that the first year is usually the most expensive because of the initial adoption fees, purchase fees if you're buying a dog from a breeder, and then those initial veterinary expenses. In short, it's impossible to tell exactly how much a dog will cost you, but you can try to make the most accurate budget possible and stick to it as closely as you can. So let's break it down and talk about initial expenses. So the first, obviously, is the fee that you're going to have to pay to adopt your new dog, whether you're buying a puppy from a reputable breeder or adopting from a shelter or rescue. That's going to determine how much you're spending. Adopting a pet can cost anywhere from $10 to $500, depending on the organization that you're using and the age of the dog. If you're not in a hurry, you can wait. Sometimes local shelters will have a waived fee event. This typically happens when they are overcrowded or they know they're coming into the overcrowding season, which is like spring and summer. While they may not waive the fee completely for all dogs, some dogs might be free, like say older dogs might be completely free, while younger dogs, instead of being $300 or $400 to adopt the dog, might only be $50. So it might not be 100% fee waived, but there are times when shelters will usually run specials like that. And if you're not in a hurry, you can always wait for something like that to save yourself a little bit of the initial expense. Keep in mind that the adoption fee includes vaccinations, spaying and neutering. That's if your dog's coming from a shelter, of course. Not to mention that the shelter has had to provide food and facilities for the dog for as long as he's been there. So, you're maybe waiting for a cheaper fee to save yourself a little bit money. But even if you get a free or reduced price, just consider donating whatever you can afford to help the shelter continue to care for homeless pets. While it's great to be able to get a dog out of the shelter, they do pay for those expenses. So if you can kick back a little bit, that would really be appreciated. If you are not going to be adopting a dog, but you want to buy a puppy, that can get incredibly expensive. Some purebred puppies sell for more than $2,000. So if it's a specific breed that you're interested in, be sure that you're doing your research on the cost of the puppies. The initial expense could be the deciding factor on whether or not you can afford that dog, or whether or not maybe you just want to go with a different breed. So that's really important. If you're looking for a puppy to buy, consider the breed and the cost, because that really could get quite pricey very quickly. Once you've adopted your new dog, whether you adopted it from a shelter or you've purchased your puppy, you're going to need to schedule an initial vet visit. This is important for your vet to get to know your pet and for your pet to be exposed to the veterinarian's office. The initial visit will also give your vet a chance to examine your dog. Hopefully your dog's in tip-top shape, but it's better to be safe than sorry. So after those initial expenses, then you're going to move into supplies and training. They'll be based on the dog that you adopt and your personal experience level. All dogs are going to need food and water bowls, a collar or harness, or both. My dogs have both, and a leash. Depending on the climate that you live in and the dog that you have, you may need to consider some clothing, jackets, boots, things like that. We live here in Maine. Our lab is fine. She has a nice thick coat. She doesn't have any problem at all in the wintertime. We adopted a rescue dog a few years ago. His name's Joey. If you've seen him in some of my videos, he's a little mixed breed. He probably weighs about 35 pounds, so he's a smaller dog. And he also has very, very thin fur. So he gets really cold in the wintertime here, and that was something we had to consider when we were rescuing him. Was, we're gonna have to outfit him with a jacket. He does have boots because we have a lot of snow here. It gets very cold. So if he's outside for an extended period of time, we have sometimes weeks where the temperatures never get above freezing or never get, above zero. We have below zero nights and sometimes below 0 days. So it's really important wherever you live. For example, it can be the other way around. If you live in Florida and you're thinking about adopting a dog with a big thick coat, you're gonna have to think of some ways to keep your dog cool. So, if you don't have air conditioning, maybe you're gonna need to invest in it. They make cooling vests and cooling jackets and things like that. So think about where you live, think about the dog that you want to get, and what things you might need as far as that's concerned. Think about your dog that you're getting and your future plans. Are you going to go hiking and adventuring a lot with your dog? So, he's definitely going to need a harness and a leash. Maybe he needs a backpack. Maybe he's going to need boots because you're hiking rough terrain often, things like that. Think about, what kind of dog am I getting and what are my future plans with this dog? Sit down and make a list of your must-have items and then a list of items that you just want but don't necessarily need. Obviously, the must-have items you're gonna have to buy, so you can do some research and find some prices on those and get a budget going. And you can pick and choose from your wants list based on your budget. Once you have the must-haves covered, if you have a little money left over, you can start picking away at those wants. Training expenses will also vary greatly. If you've adopted an adult dog, he might already have some training. If you're looking at adopting a puppy, you have a lot of training work in your future. Think about the dog that you're considering and the training that you expect him to have. Are you just expecting house training and basic command training? Do you want him to go to the bathroom outside and come when he's called and sit and stay? That's pretty basic stuff. Is it a dog that you're adopting that you want to be a hunting dog, that you want to be a service animal, that you want to be an emotional support animal? Those dogs need other more extensive training that you probably won't be able to do by yourself. Maybe you're planning to enter your pet into dog shows, agility competitions, nose work competitions, things like that. That's training that you can do yourself, but it's going to take time, it's going to take resources, and it's going to take supplies. So you have to take that into consideration. Depending on your expectations, you may need to plan for professional training expenses or special equipment. Again, sit down, include that in your list. What do you need? What do you want? And how much? Do some research. What is it going to cost you? The cost for professional dog training can cost upwards of $1,000 depending on the type of training and how easily your dog picks up on what he's learning. If you're just looking for some basic command training and you want to take your dog to puppy training classes, those are fairly inexpensive. If you're looking for, more extensive training, that's going to get a little bit pricier. So you need to think about your expectations and go from there. Even if you're not looking into professional training, at-home training will still have a cost, but it'll be minimal compared to professional training. You might not need a lot of equipment, say for like agility training. Maybe you're just doing command training at home, but you might need training aids, guidebooks. If you don't have any training experience, you're going to need some of those things to help you get started. If you plan to kennel train your dog, which I highly recommend, I have done some videos on how to kennel train and why it's so important. Obviously, you're going to need to buy a kennel. You're going to also need to make sure that that kennel is going to be comfortable for your dog. So getting the right size is important. Bigger kennels are more expensive. You are going to need a kennel mat or a bed inside so your dog can be comfortable. You may consider water bowls that attach to the kennel walls if he's going to be in there for lengthy periods of time. So again, think about your unique situation and what you're going to need to make sure that your dog is comfortable and happy and well taken care of. Don't forget the treats. While it's not really a big expense, you'll go through plenty of treats when your dog is first learning to sit, stay, and use the bathroom outside. So consider that in your budget because it is an expense that will add up over time. We also need to talk about veterinary expenses. This is a hard one because, you never know. Accidents and emergencies come up. Like I said, some dogs are more prone to certain health issues than others, so that can be more expensive than other breeds. But if you purchase a puppy from a breeder, you're going to have to plan for the upcoming spaying and neutering expense first off. Discuss that with your vet at the first visit. Like I said, after you bring your dog home, you need to schedule that first visit, and they can tell you how much it's going to cost. On average, it's going to be about $150 to $300 to neuter a male dog, and spaying a female dog could cost anywhere from $200 to $400. Again, though, your veterinarian can give you a more accurate estimate. Don't forget the annual exam. Whether you are adopting an adult dog or a puppy, they're going to need an annual exam. It's going to cost at least $100 to $200 per year for the annual exam, and that's if your pet's in good health. This cost includes the yearly exam as well as any vaccinations that your dog might need. But it's important to save a little bit of money each month in a savings account for unexpected expenses. Maybe at your annual exam, a problem's discovered. Your dog needs to be on medication or needs a surgery. Maybe he's diagnosed with a certain condition. Or maybe those emergencies pop up. Your dog breaks his leg or eats something he shouldn't and has to go to the vet to get that extracted. Whatever that is, I recommend opening a special savings account just for pet purposes. I try to put at least $20 from every paycheck into that account. If your pet has a health emergency, you'll have a little bit of money in the bank for it. Emergency surgeries can cost thousands of dollars, so it's important to be prepared. If you start right out from the beginning, saving that money, hopefully you have time to build that up before you need it. If you're able to, in the beginning, plan to put a good chunk, like maybe $500 in that savings account to get started, and then the little bit from every paycheck to add on to it. If your pet ends up needing a surgery down the road, maybe you can't cover all of it with your savings, but if you can cover a good chunk of it with your savings, and then you only have to borrow or finance, a small portion of it, that will make a big difference. So I definitely recommend a pet savings account. And then finally, and I think this is the expense that everybody always considers or usually considers, are those daily expenses. If you thought the initial expenses were a lot, hang on to your hat. Daily expenses like food, treats, grooming supplies, those can really add up. And again, like I said, this is a decade-long or more commitment. So, you're thinking that dog food's only going to cost you, $60 or $70 a month when, you times that by 12 months a year and then 10 years. I mean, you're looking at a huge investment down the road. So it's definitely something that needs to be taken seriously. Obviously, with these daily expenses, it's going to depend on the quality of the products that you're buying. I understand that everyone needs to stick to a budget. I completely understand that. But when it comes to pet products, like everything else, you get what you pay for. The cheaper the food that you buy, the poorer the quality of the food, the poorer your dog's nutrition. So over time, feeding a low quality diet can lead to paying more in veterinary expenses because your dog is having issues with this poor nutrition over a lengthy period of time. I recommend finding the best food that you can afford. On average, you'll probably need to budget at least $600 a year for food for a medium-sized dog. Of course, it will cost more to feed large or extra large breeds, and it might cost a little bit less if you have a teacup or a small breed. Toys and treats are another expense to account for. You can make homemade treats to save money, but every dog does deserve treats from time to time, so try to factor that into your budget. It's not a super large expense, and it's something that can come in really handy when you're trying to reward your dog or praise him for something or do some training. If you're adopting an older dog or a lazier breed, you might not need to spend as much on toys as you would if you adopt a puppy or a more active breed. For a younger active dog, I would recommend budgeting about $250 a year for toys and treats. That is, your regular chew toys, plush toys, rope toys that you have around the house. That's going to be some interactive toys, some puzzle feeders, things like that. Some toys that are going to keep him mentally stimulated, because if you have a dog that's more active or a younger puppy, they need that mental stimulation, or you're going to see some negative behaviors on the other end. They're going to get bored, they're going to look for something to entertain themselves, and it's probably going to be chewing something that you don't want them to chew, or ruining stuff around your home that you don't want them to get into. So be sure that that's something that you consider. Bedding is another important cost to consider. Every dog needs a bed. They need a comfortable place to rest and relax. You can spend $100 or more on a quality dog bed. Obviously, depending on the size that you need, the bigger the dog, the bigger the bed, the more expensive. The smaller the dog, the smaller the bed, the less expensive. You can spend less than $50 on a cheaper bed, but again, I just caution you, you get what you pay for. So cheaper beds are going to be stuffed with polyfill. They're going to go flat. They're going to be uncomfortable after just a couple of months. More expensive beds are made with higher quality materials like memory foam that are going to last for 5 years or more. They may last the whole life of your dog. Sadie is coming up on 9 years old this year, and she has had the same bed since she was a puppy. That's another thing to consider. She's a Labrador. When she was a puppy, she was very small. She grew to be a 75-pound dog. So I didn't buy her a small bed when she was a puppy and then keep buying beds as she got bigger. I did my research. I knew how big she was going to be as an adult. So I bought one bed in the beginning, that was big enough for her now as an adult, and we've never bought her another one. It was a high quality, expensive bed made with some good memory foam, but she's still laying on it. It still has its regular shape, and we've been very happy with it. So that was a one-time larger expense, but I haven't ever had to replace that bed. So if you're spending, $40 or $50 on a bed every year, you might as well just spend a couple hundred and get a good bed from the get-go. What I'm trying to say is spending a little more on quality products now is going to save you money in the long run. Again, I understand everybody's on a budget, but it's better to budget more money in the beginning to save yourself from having to replace products a few months down the road. Other costs to consider, depending on your situation, you might need to think about some other expenses, licensing fees in the town that you live in, pet insurance, professional grooming services. That's going to depend on the dog that you get. Our chocolate lab, she's never been to a professional groomer. We brush her and bathe her ourselves. If you have a dog with a coat that's prone to matting, if you have a dog that's going to need regular haircuts, that's stuff that's going to cost you more money. Boarding, doggy daycare expenses. If you're not home, if you're gone long days, it's not fair to your dog to be left home for long periods of time like that. If you're going to be gone for 10 or 12 hours a day, you may have to consider doggy daycare, pet sitting, dog walking services, stuff like that. So think about your situation and those things that you're going to need. Like I said, I really recommend sitting down, making a list, thinking it all through, must-haves on one side, wants on the other, and work out your budget that way.